Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here. So just last week, with a bunch of Yu-Gi tubers opening boxes of Lightning Overdrive, we finally know all of the different cards and rarities that are going to be in the upcoming set. We have the sneak peek coming up this weekend, and then the set will officially be released the week after. Of course, one of the things that players are most interested in is what cards are going to be secret rares, because they will typically be the hardest cards to find and command the highest prices. That being said, now that we know what they are, I don't want you guys to go and overpay for secret rares on the sneak peek weekend. There's limited quantities of the cards available on the market, so people are naturally going to try to demand some ridiculous prices early on, even though we all know that the prices are going to quickly cool off after people have had a chance to tear open more of the packs. So today we're going to talk about each of the secret rares in the upcoming set and try to come up with a realistic prediction for where each of those card prices is going to settle. Let's get started. Alright, we are starting off with Diviner of the Heralds, which is probably going to be the chase card of the set. Its effect is fairly straightforward. If this card is summoned, you get to send a fairy monster from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard. Most commonly, this is going to let you dump Herald of the Arclight to search for a ritual monster or spell card. Its other effect lets you summon a level 2 or lower fairy monster from your hand or deck when this card is tributed, other than a Diviner, right? So you can summon out Ava, link it off and then search, or summon a Cyber Petite Angel or something like that. I think that the expectation here is that Diviner is going to be a key piece of the Drytron deck, which has the potential to be one of the best decks of the upcoming format after Lightning Overdrive is released. At the moment, I can't think of too many other decks that are really going to need this card. Maybe something more rogue like Necros, but Drytrons will definitely be the big one. Now, in terms of price, I think that Animadorned Archosaur is the perfect comparison to this card. In both cases, it's a secret rare that you run 2 to 3 copies of, supporting a deck that has a lot of meta potential. If I remember correctly, Archosaur was around 50 to 60 early on, and then dropped in price pretty soon after to around the $40 mark, which I think sounds about right for the release of this card. Of course, the price from there just depends on how good Drytrons are going to be with the addition of Diviner. Dinos were a great deck and have been for the last couple of formats, which is a big part of why we're now seeing Archosaurs up at the $70 mark each. If Drytrons really do well, it wouldn't surprise me to see Diviner hit $70 to $80 a piece. If the deck just can't keep up for whatever reason, then maybe Diviner does fall to 30 or 40 until something else coming into the meta is able to bring its price back up. I don't see this card falling below the $30 mark, just because it is one of the few cards in the set that does have more potential applications, especially compared to some of the other secret rares. It's definitely one of the chase cards that people are going to be trying to pull and own multiples of. So speaking of Drytrons, we have a secret rare monster that is specifically made for the Drytron archetype that I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. It is Mu Beta Fafnir. I'm sure you guys have all heard about this one. It's a generic rank 1 Ixies with 3 effects that is meant to be used for the Drytron archetype, obviously. Firstly, you can detach materials from this card to tribute for ritual summons. Secondly, when this card is summoned, you get to dump a Drytron monster from your deck to the graveyard. And thirdly, while you control a machine ritual monster, you can detach a material from this card to negate a spell or trap card. Now obviously this card is really crazy in the Drytron strategy, providing so many different functions. In general, I think you're probably going to be just running 1 copy because you do only get 15 extra deck spaces, and now that you have Diviner, you also have to include Herald of the Arclight. However, I think you could arguably play 2 copies depending on your build. Now, despite how you will typically run fewer copies of Fafnir than Diviner, and despite how Fafnir has more limited applications, I think that on release, Fafnir is going to be one of the more expensive cards in the set because it's easily one of the most hyped up cards coming in. I could easily see Fafnir being $60 to $70 on release, but then quickly falling soon after people have had a chance to pick up their copies. If this card came out a few months ago, before Benton was limited and Union Carrier was banned, it would probably be an $80 to $90 card easily. Now, however, Drytrons will still have to compete with Dragon Link and Shaddoll Invoked and Prank Kids, so many different other deck choices out there. Who knows what's going to be the best deck of the upcoming format? Drytrons will probably be solid, but they'll just be one of many options. Most realistically, even though Drytrons will still be a really good deck, I see Fafnir settling at anywhere from $20 to $30 after the set has released due to its very limited applications. Next up, Book of Lunar Eclipse is a quick play spell card that's like an upgraded version of Book of Moon, where you get to discard a card, then target 2 monsters on the field and flip them into face down defense position. Obviously a really simple effect. It kind of reminds me of what Twin Twisters was like when it first came out. Now unfortunately I don't think that Book of Lunar Eclipse will be anywhere nearly as useful as Twin Twisters. Discarding a card can be a really big cost, especially in today's format where people want to hold on to hand traps or combo pieces for the following turn. I could maybe see this card being potentially useful in something like Burning Abyss or Ogdoadic, where getting a card into the graveyard is really beneficial, but I don't really see it being that great. It's also not a hand trap, right? It's a quick play spell card, so you kind of have to use it like a trap a lot of the time, and then set it if you want to disrupt your opponent during their combo. It can't shut off things like link monsters either, since obviously you can't turn link monsters into defense mode. I think that the idea of this card is cool, and it might be potentially useful somewhere in some random strategy down the line. I just don't think it's really going to pan out because of the way that the game is played now. I could see this card getting a bit of hype early on just because people are going to look at it as an upgraded version of Book of Moon, but people will realize pretty quickly that it's purely outclassed by Book of Moon or even Book of Eclipse. I think that the card is going to be $15 to $20 on release, but then quickly fall to anywhere from $7 to $10 shortly after. The fourth secret rare that we have here is Amazement Administrator Arlecchino, one of the two secret rares for the Amazement archetype. The card has a pretty interesting summoning condition, as you can special summon it from your hand if a trap card is activated. Now if your opponent summons a monster, you can equip that monster with an attraction trap card from your deck. The Amazement theme actually has a crackdown type of trap card, so it would let you steal the monster that they summon. And then also you can banish attraction traps from your graveyard to destroy an equal number of cards that your opponent controls, which is really cool as well. Now, I'm not an expert on this archetype or anything like that. From the research that I've done into it, there are a few different ways that you can play it. I know Pack featured a really trap heavy build on his channel, MBT and Lithium tried out the deck with trap tricks, and there were some other builds that were running Lilith and some hand traps, things like that. Anyways, the deck does seem like a new Eldritch type of strategy, where you run the boss monster as a 3-of, and then a whole bunch of different trap cards, which is kind of cool. I don't know how viable or meta relevant the deck is going to be, but I think it's a lot better than what people give it credit for, and it will eventually see the occasional top here or there. I know a lot of people, including me, kind of thought that the deck was going to be completely irrelevant when the cards were first revealed. Believe it or not, I have this card pegged as one of these slept on secret rares that people are going to overlook and then is going to increase in price when it eventually sees success, though we might have to wait until after the upcoming ban list for that to come into fruition. I think that on release, this card will probably be a $20 to $25 card and then cool off shortly after to $12 to $15. At that price, however, is when I would buy my copies if possible, because I think that within a few months, we'll see the Amazement cards used somewhere and people will buy this card out to the $30 to $40 mark. So the other Amazement themed secret rare that we have is Amazing Time Ticket. This card is a quick play spell card that makes you pay 800 life points and has two potential effects depending on when you activate it. If it's your turn, you get to search for an Amazement card from your deck and add it to your hand, but if it's your opponent's turn, you can set an attraction trap card from your deck, and you do have the option of activating that trap card this turn. Obviously, a great card for the Amazement theme, and just like Arlecchinos, I think it is a card that will see some play in due time. However, this card is also printed as the ultra rare sneak peek card from Lightning Overdrive, something that I personally am not really all that fond of. It makes it feel kind of demoralizing to pull this card when you also have the option of winning it as a sneak peek promo as well. As we can see from the price of Tri-Brigade Airborne Assault, it's actually the ultra rare that commands a higher price point than the secret rare, just because there are fewer quantities of the card running around on the market, so pulling the promo as a secret rare just doesn't really feel that great at all. Anyways, just like Arlecchinos, I think that this card will see a price action where it falls and is low on release but jumps back up later. I could realistically also see this card coming at $15 to $20 on release, falling down to anywhere from $5 to $10 as the Amazement probably won't do too well initially, before jumping back to the $20 to $25 mark if the Amazement deck is actually able to perform. Next up, Warrock Meteoragan is one of the latest support cards for the Warrock deck, a TCG exclusive archetype that debuted in Blazing Vortex. This card is a level 7 monster that cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Fortunately, Warrock Mountain and a couple of the level 4 Warrock monsters have ways to summon this card from out of your hand or deck, so you don't have to tribute summon it. Now, if this card battles, you can negate the effects of the monster that it battles with, as well as any other card that has the same name for the rest of the turn. It can also boost your Warrock monster's attack points and allows itself to attack multiple times. I think that if the Warrock archetype came out maybe back in 2005, then it might have a slight chance of being competitive, but with the way that the game is played now, I don't think it stands a chance at all. It would take several amazingly broken new cards for this deck to have even the slightest chance of being viable, and this is undoubtedly going to be the biggest dud secret rare in Lightning Overdrive. Hopefully you guys aren't Farfa and you didn't buy 30 copies of Warrock Mountain thinking that the new support would actually be any good, because it was pretty easy to see from how poor the first wave of support was that they just weren't gonna really be able to do anything. Realistically, this is going to be a $2 secret rare at most, but it will probably be $5 or so at the beginning, just because of the fact that it's a secret rare. Next, Bengal Answer the Resurgent is a Link 4 plant monster that almost feels like it could be a new Chaos Ruler type of card. It has two effects, the first one letting you take damage equal to an opponent's monster's attack points, and then returning that monster to the hand, so it could be a sort of situational out to certain things. Its second effect allows you to banish Link monsters from your graveyard up to a total of 4, and then you can special summon this card from your graveyard, but you have to banish it when it leaves the field. This card is almost really good, right? Providing that spot removal, it has some combo potential. The big hindrance is that when you link summon it, you can only use plant monsters. Effectively, this limits you to using it in the Sun Avalon archetype, which isn't really that great, unless we were to get some new Sylvan support or something like that. If this card were generic, I could maybe see it being an important piece to some people's extra decks depending on the format, but as it is, I see the card being at most a $15 to $20 card on release before settling down at $7 to $10, at least until we get some sort of new plant archetype or something that makes this card just easier to bring out. Alright, so Bajalutia the Grand Radiance is an interesting sounding card, though to be fair I hadn't really heard of it before this weekend, so it probably isn't going to be anything too crazy. You can tribute summon this card by tributing one effect monster even though it's a level 7. Its main effect is that if your opponent adds a card from their deck to their hand, other than by drawing it, right, so just searching, you can tribute summon this card, and then it has an on summon effect where you can banish an equal number of cards from the top of your opponent's deck to the number of cards in their hand, shuffle their hand into the deck, then the cards that you banished become their new hand. It's kind of like a Trickstar reincarnation, but in monster form, and since you're banishing their new hand first, they theoretically can't add the card that they just searched. So even if they're playing 3 copies of that card, they're less likely now to have the card than if they shuffled the hand into the deck because there's one fewer copy there. Honestly, this card feels extremely situational and not really all that great. I don't know why they decided to make it a secret rare in the first place, to be honest, since I don't see it as being something that a lot of people would want to play as a tech, and I don't see any strategies where people are going to aim to make use of this card's effect consistently. Unfortunately, until I see something that shows that this card is actually going to be relevant or useful, I can only consider this card to be another dud secret rare that isn't going to be worth any more than $5 to $10 anytime soon. Alright, we are on to Ruddy Rose Dragon, and before we say anything, I have to say, whoever decided to change this card's name from Blood Rose Dragon to Ruddy Rose Dragon should probably be fired. Like, what kind of name change is that? Anyways, this card is a level 10 generic synchro monster where you can banish all cards from both graveyards when this card is summoned, but if you synchro summon it using a Black Rose Dragon or a plant synchro monster as a material, then you also get to destroy all other cards on the field. It does also get a mini Stardust Dragon type of effect, where if your opponent activates a card or effect that would destroy a card, you can tribute this card to negate that activation, then summon a Black Rose Dragon from either your extra deck or your graveyard. Obviously, the whole Rose Garden theme got a few new cards in Lightning Overdrive, and I guess now the deck can do some more cool gimmicky things. You still have cards like Lone Fire Blossom and Orphis Scorpio for some interesting plays, and you have dragons in there technically, so you could do something with LP, but I feel like there's not much of a reason to play this deck over something like Dragon Link, at least from a competitive perspective. Now, it is worth noting that you can summon Ruddy Rose Dragon with Cross Rose Dragon, which lets you tribute itself and another plant to summon a Rose Synchro monster from your extra deck. So you could potentially interrupt your opponent during their turn and banish a whole bunch of resources out of the graveyard, but you have to tribute a plant with Cross Rose in order to do so, which means it's probably going to be only useful in some sort of plant-based strategy. I guess theoretically you could use Cross Rose and like a Verte Anaconda to make it, but that sounds pretty situational and underwhelming to me. Unfortunately, this is yet another card that I don't really see as having much of a competitive impact on the game. It's something that might get a bit of attention because of its collectability for those people that are really big fans of Black Rose Dragon and whatnot, but I think that you won't actually find very many people that are looking for the card, and sales rates are probably going to be pretty low. It's another card that I think will come out at $20 to $25 on release just because of that initial hype, but it'll quickly settle back down to around $10 to $12 within a couple weeks of the set being released. Alright, so the last secret rare that we have to talk about is Dark Honest, which is obviously like the dark version of the original Honest. It has a very similar effect to the original. If it's on your side of the field, you can bounce it back to your hand. Also, if your dark monster battles, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard to basically make your opponent's monster have 0 attack points, so you can get rid of the monster by battle and deal some damage to your opponent. This card definitely came out like a decade late, since as we can see from archetypes like the Warrocks, the battle phase just isn't nearly as important as it used to be. It's a really cool card in terms of art and how it's a retrain of a historically significant card, but unfortunately it's just probably not going to be relevant in today's game. Even something like Honest basically sees like no play whatsoever, right? In terms of value, I think it'll still be worth more than something like that Plant Link or like Bajalutia, which aren't useful and don't really have any historical tie-ins, but it's not like this is going to be a chase card or anything like that. Much like Ruddy Rose Dragon, I can see this card being $20 to $25 on release and then falling down to $10 to $15 pretty shortly after. Alright guys, so believe it or not, that is all of these secret rares. In terms of value coming from the secrets, it's really not looking like Lightning Overdrive is going to be that great of a set. I have more than half of the cards being down at around the $10 mark, which isn't a great sign, especially compared to sets that we got last year, like Eternity Code and Rise of the Duelist, which had a lot of high dollar, high value cards. There are some pretty interesting cards coming out in the set, but I think that for the most part they are in lower rarities, which is great for players in terms of accessibility and being able to actually play the game. But in this set, it's definitely looking like a Rising Rampage or a Chaos Impact in terms of getting value back from cracking open sealed product. Anyways guys, that is it for today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure that you hit the thumbs up button to let me know. Also, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you guys think about Lightning Overdrive, what you guys think about the value in terms of the secret rares that are being pulled, and what other cards you wish were maybe printed as a secret rare instead of some of these duds that we're seeing. Also, if you haven't already, make sure that you hit the subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.